Now, I might have to bite my words here. I had said that rogues are likely to be the weakest party in Baldur's Gate 3, and after my experience in Act 1, well, it just might be the case. But how will the whole party of rogues go in Act 2? Surely higher levels, better equipment, and more invisibility will help, right? I have respec my entire party into rogues and plan to play through Baldur's Gate 3 on tactician difficulty just to see how hard it can be. And let's be clear on this, because I wasn't in the first video in the series, which you can watch here by the way, but I am not multi-classing them in any way. Yep, pure rogue. Now in Act 1 they proved to have clear strengths and could dominate provided they had the advantage and initiated the fight. But if they're ever caught off guard or surrounded, well, you can just imagine how that would go. Well, buckle up my sneaky, stealthy friends. We're going on an adventure. Picking up from where we left off, we started back at the entrance to the Shadow-Cursed Lands. Before we went, I decided to go back into the Underdark and investigate the tower one last time. A few of you in the comments pointed out that I should wear this ring when on the elevator and it should reveal a hidden button, which is exactly what happened. Thank you comment section. This took us to a hidden floor with some pretty cool loot, plus some ingredients for an Amelium's potion, which might help remove the tadpole. So we took these mushrooms to Amelium, who gave us a potion. After we drank it, we passed the skill checks, but unfortunately the potion and Amelium couldn't get rid of the parasite. However, we did get a new lifted power called Survival Instinct, so that's useful. While we're here, I thought it would be best to look for the Susser tree bark, so we can infuse a dag with it and create the Susser dagger. This will come in handy later. Now that that was taken care of, we returned to the entrance of the Shadow-Cursed Lands and continued onwards. After entering the Shadow-Cursed Lands, we were greeted by the goblin who thought us to be a true soul.
Are you the true soul?
We followed the goblin to their group. We witnessed another goblin tricking a hyena to fetch a bone into the shadows, leading the hyena to its death. This looked like a pretty fun game, and Don commanded the goblin to do the same thing.
So you want me to... I mean, I'll just go and, No. No!
We spoke to Cansiv, and I wanted to see what would happen if we played along at this point. Don played the lyre to summon our arachnid guide. The guide approved of us and started to guide us through the shadows. Along the way, we happened to spot some harpers laying in ambush, so we took the opportunity to strike first. Initially, we fought alongside the Absolutists. However, I realized that this is maybe a good opportunity to hopefully see if the harpers can kill the spider dingus guy and hopefully give us an opportunity to take the lantern without having to fight him ourselves. So we did what good rogues do and hid in the shadows. Unfortunately, the harpers were no match for the Absolutists, so it looks like no lantern for us. We continued to follow Spider-Man all the way to the Moonrise Towers, all while keeping the facade of being a true soul. The spider guy climbed to the top of the tower, which meant that we were never going to get his lantern. And I know we haven't seen the last of him. We proceeded inside and stood before Ketheric, and witnessed as a goblin threw a spear like a bloody missile at him. We were given the opportunity to punish the goblins, which Don was more than happy to do. We went upstairs and spoke to Zerel, who asked us to help Balthazar find the Night Song. We accepted the mission and was told to go into Balthazar's room to find a lantern. We entered the room and found the lantern, but we also did some additional perusing of his room, and we found our way into this hidden room by placing this dead guy's heart on the altar. After looting all we could find, we tried to get into Ketheric's room, but we failed too many times to get through the door on the outside, and I wasn't going to waste all my lockpicks here. So we decided to be a little bit more sneaky. Lae'zel turned invisible and snuck through the main hall and lockpicked the door from the inside. Once inside, she was confronted by Ketheric's dog, but luckily Lae'zel is pretty intimidating. She let everyone else in and we proceeded to loot all we could find. Then we went into the room where the mimic was and absolutely slaughtered it. Now, before we left Moonrise Towers, we explored around a little bit more and went into the kitchen. In the kitchen, there was a group of gnolls who were being controlled by a trainer. She claimed to have a good hold on them, however, her command wavered, allowing Don the opportunity to control them himself, in which he commanded the gnolls to kill their trainer.
No!
We also brought this ring from a trader in Moonrise Towers, which allowed the wearer to have an advantage on attacks at the expense of death rolls. This was very useful. It was now time to venture into the Shadowland. Before going to Balthazar, I wanted to take on the 3 Thorm siblings. First, we went to the tavern and confronted Thizabald Thorm. Using our sleight of hand, we tricked him into thinking we were going 1-for-1 with him, despite not drinking at all. We eventually outdrank him to his bursting points, where he literally, burst. We looted the tavern and went across to the toll house. Now, I wondered if there was anything we could pickpocket from Gerringolf Thorm that would help us in the dialogue with her. We snuck up to her, and I realized that we probably should go into turn-based mode, and at the last second I switched just as she turned around, barely missing everyone. I managed to pickpocket her and steal 2 of the 3 items she had, but unfortunately Don was caught, which started the fight. Don was in an unbelievably bad spot. Garyangoth had no problem taking advantage of this, and she shoved him right out the window. And since everyone was using the lantern for protection, this meant that everyone else upstairs was doomed. Over the next few turns, I frantically got everyone to try and reunite with Don. Unfortunately, Shadowheart was killed and finished off before I could get her to Don. She then rose from the dead as a zombie. This was less than ideal. However, I did manage to get Lae'zel and Astarion to Don, who were far enough away that we could escape in short rests before going back into the fight. We went back to the roof and attacked Shadowheart, who was just wandering around. When we did, combat started with Garyangoth again. We managed to kill Shadowheart, and this even allowed us to revive her. Unfortunately though, we were all still in a rough spot. Everyone was being dominated by Garyangoth and the Skulls, and Don was pushed from the ceiling again. As you would have guessed, the outcome from this fight was a failure. My next attempt, I tried the pickpocketing strategy again. I managed to steal everything from her without being caught. We got the key to her office. My plan was to see what talking to her with the items would do, while having my party ready to fight in the office and use the door as a choke point. Unfortunately, Shadowheart was caught and Don had the items on him, though I couldn't test my theory. While Shadowheart was in dialogue, I snuck everyone into the office and prepared the fight. I dropped a fire barrel and a smoke powder barrel at the door, and once Shadowheart was out of dialogue, I got Don to cast Cloud of Daggers to damage anything coming through. Sure enough, the Skulls teleported to Garyangoth and our traps were a clear winner. Most of the Skulls flew through the daggers, and the ones that couldn't reach were in firing line of the barrels. Although Garyangoth killed Shadowheart, the barrels managed to kill 2 Skulls, and the Cloud of Daggers had done decent damage to the others. This allowed us to pick the Skulls off one by one. We did have to use the Scroll of Revival on Shadowheart, but we managed to kill all the Skulls, leaving Garyangoth easy pickings for the party. We long rested, and that night Skeletorus Fell greeted us, requesting that we kill the cleric Isabel, so now we had a reason to go to Last Lights Inn. We continued to make our way to the hospital, and on the way we killed some shadows in the square and then confronted Malice Thorm.
The scalpel indeed is an extension of Shah.
We attempted to convince him that he must be the one that the nurses work on, however we failed the role, so we had the fire. For this fight I focused on the followers first, really trying to use the sneak and shadows to our advantage. After killing a couple of nurses, I thought it might be wise to loot them and steal the weapons they had, in case Malice revived them. That's when I discovered this poison they carried. I then had a wonderful idea of throwing the poison at Malice, which worked in stunning him. This allowed everyone time to finish off the remaining nurses, and each time I picked up the poison they held and used it against Malice, keeping him stun locked. Using all the shadows, we were able to get some amazing sneak attacks on Malice and eventually finish them off. I now wanted to go to Last Light Inn and see what we could do about Isabel. We helped the Harpers that were in the shadows, and they invited us to the Last Light. We followed them in where Jaheira stopped us at the gate. She almost wouldn't let us through until Marcus stepped in and vouched for us. Now this was interesting. I was interested to see what was going to happen, so I followed him to see that he didn't do anything but stand there. I left him for now and spoke to Jaheira, and convinced her that we were here to help. I decided that I wasn't going to kill Isabel yet, as we could use the Harpers in the battle against Ketheric. We then went upstairs and confronted Marcus. We called him out for his plans to capture Isabel and betrayed him. The massive fight broke out, but we had Marcus surrounded and we slaughtered him in the first turn. I resisted my own urge to kill Isabel, as this would have been a great opportunity to do so, and helped fight the remaining winged horrors. We now had Isabel's protection, which was useful in the weaker shadow cursed areas. We explored some more and went to the abandoned house where we fought and slaughtered the meatlocks. Now I did try and fight some of the cursed needle blights, but I couldn't see an easy way to get a good advantage of them. Plus there were so many and they just wasted me. So I decided to leave them be and explored the Masonry Guild and fought the shadows inside the basement. I helped He Who Was, and also killed the remaining nurses in the hospital. Now that we had all that squared away, we made our way to the Sharon Temple. Raphael was at the entrance practicing his poetry.
Thought but of treasure ahead, did not consider the peace of the dead. Through the dark he went creeping, and awoke what was sleeping. A new grave they dug, which he himself fed.
He asked us to slay Yurga. We agreed to do so in exchange for information regarding Astarion's back engraving. We entered the Sharon cave, looted everything at the entrance, and solved the puzzle to let us in. After entering the Sharon temple, I was determined to solve the Sharon puzzle without setting off the traps like last time. I had Don sneak around alone, disable each of the floor traps before pulling the lever in each 4 corners of the room. This lowered all of the lanterns down. I then extinguished them all and then lit the one in the center. This showed us the correct way to enter the gem in the center. This opened the big door in the back. Now, I had never gone this way before, so I decided to waltz on through the door, and it wasn't long until we ran into some undead who were under Balthazar's control. However, we were interrupted by some Justiciar ghosts.
Stupid worm-infested cockhead! You have awoken the shadows!
I made great use of invisibility and had our party sneak up and assassinate each one of them. We then made our way to where Balthazar was cooped up. Unfortunately, we were attacked by the Justiciar Avengers again. I tried my best to destroy all the portals and prevent more spawning in. We even managed to destroy the big one in the middle. However, there were still way too many enemies. Each of them had 2 attacks each and eventually outnumbered and wiped us out. We reloaded, and this time I wondered if we could sneak in. On the way around, I managed to sneak and lockpick the vault door, stealing loot inside, and then made my way to Balthazar's door. Unfortunately, there was no sneaking past this fight, so we had to try again. I did a better job of destroying the tremors and staying closer together. However, I couldn't destroy the big one in time, but the Justiciar champion spawned. This wasn't looking good. From this point, I tried my best to use their stealth and hit everyone after each attack. Thankfully, the Justiciar ghosts had terrible perception. I tried to lockpick my way into Balthazar's locked room, but unfortunately, I could only waste all my lockpicks. So I had to try and survive this fight without any help. I continued with my hide and seek method of attacking, managing to kill a couple while sticking to the shadows, though unfortunately Don was killed. After his death, I had my party turn invisible to hide from the Justiciar champion and get the advantage on him. This caused the remaining Justiciars to look around for us, and then suddenly they gave up. Combat ended, and this started the cutscene of Balthazar opening the door. I quickly snuck everyone towards the door. However, Astarion's invisibility ran out, so combat started again. I had Shadowheart revive Don and get everyone inside Balthazar's room and hid. As I suspected, the Justiciars followed us in and Balthazar and his cronies joined the fight. I decided to wait out the fight and see who was left standing. Balthazar and his undead made quick work of the Justiciars. This turn of events did have an unusual outcome, however. Balthazar was stuck outside the room and I couldn't start dialogue with him. So I decided to pickpocket the bell from him, which allowed us to summon flesh, as I figured this would be handy in a fight against Hugo. Although we were successful in stealing the bell, Balthazar must have sensed our guilty conscience and attacked us. I wasn't going down without a fight. The rogues used their invisibility to get the jump on Balthazar. From the shadows, we surrounded him and used the sneak attacks to quickly take him out. Now the biggest threat was out of the way, it was now time to take out his undead. His more invisibility spells to keep the party in the shadows. Unfortunately, Don was paralyzed and squished by the flesh, leaving us at a disadvantage. After retreating Astarion away, I realized that there were still Justiciars in the area, which was good because Flesh prioritized attacking them for some reason, allowing everyone else to kill the ghouls. Once the ghouls were dead and Flesh had killed the Justiciars, he was the only one remaining, and at this stage, he was easy picking for us. Somehow, I managed to defeat everyone there, which was an outcome I did not expect whatsoever. This also meant that I didn't have to fight Balthazar later, which I'm very grateful for. We revived Don with withers and took a well-deserved rest. After our rest, we sat back and watched while Shadowheart completed the Gauntlet of Shah. We fought and slaughtered the Justiciar priest in the library and we got the spear. Don was left with 1 health after this and was killed randomly by a rat who was sitting next to the elevator. So the party rested and Don got his revenge. The next thing we had to do was fight Yuga. Now I wanted to see what would happen if we walked in and we spoke to him. Unfortunately, it seemed like we couldn't make a deal with him that wouldn't go against Astarion's plan.
What are you doing? The devil told us to kill this thing, so let's stop chatting and kill it.
So we had to attack. The first challenge was to displace the beast. We all used our invisibility and hid from it on the first round, and then we got some immediate good hits on it. It took Don down in 1 attack, then teleported itself and Lae'zel to Yuga's bombs, where they were both blown up. At least we didn't have to worry about the displacer beast anymore. I quickly revived Don and Lae'zel and took them underneath and hid. While hiding, Lae'zel used Pass Without Trace, which came from that ring that we got from Oliver. While this was active, we hid and waited for the Merregons to make their way down. As we laid in wait, 3 of the Merregons came down. Our stealth was so good that we could stay in their field of vision without being detected and struck all 3 down. We then waited for more to come, and waited, and waited. However, they simply cowered in fear upstairs. So we decided to make our way up to them. We snuck our way up to the tip of the broken stairway and used sneak attack and hide on Yuga, who seemed pretty content on not doing anything at all. Well, I for one was going to take full advantage of this. We continued to sneak attack Yuga down and finished him off. Then I got pretty brazen and went and fought the remaining Merregons who were cowering around the fire. That went far better than I expected. After this, we had all reached level 8, which meant second feat. I wanted to be a little bit experimental here. At this stage, I hadn't looked at what would be the best to choose for rogues, and so I chose what I felt would be good. For Don, I chose Savage Attacker. Shadowheart, I gave Defensive Duelist. Astarion got Martial Adept with Precision Attack and Quick Feet. Lae'zel, I gave Dual Wielder so she could finally dual wield the longswords I had been saving for her. Now at this point, I was beginning to think that I might have to bite my words, because the rogues were getting very, very good and very, very fun. But let's not rush to any conclusions just yet. Now, if you've been enjoying this video so far, I would appreciate it if you gave it a thumbs up. And if you want to see more content by me, subscribe to the channel. Now it's time to collect the last orb and make our way down to the Night Song. We descended through the temple and went through the waters to Sharon's domain. I was once again relieved that Balthazar was not here to greet us. Honestly, I had no idea how I was going to survive that fight if he was still alive. We made our way down to the Night Song. Now for this, I wanted to see what would happen if we didn't interfere with Shadowheart. And to my surprise and Don's disgust, Shadowheart threw the spear away without any need for me to do anything. Well, that's interesting. Shadowheart released the Night Song, who flew off to wage war against Ketheric. Once we had arrived in the real world, Jaheira and most of the Harpers had gone to Moonrise to fight Ketheric, which meant this was Don's opportunity to strike. We travelled back to the Last Light Inn and Don, Shadowheart, made quick work of Isabel. This caused Isabel's protection to fall from the inn, allowing the curse to turn everyone inside. We fought off the turned Harpers and Vines and made camp for the night. Raphael came and told us the story behind Astarion's, behind, and we were greeted by a very happy Skeletorous fellow who gave us some new Gym Jams, which came in the form of Slayer form. Things were about to get real fun. Now it was time to join the assault on Moonrise Towers. We joined up with the Harpers, looted all the bodies, and took the chance to get some good initial attacks on Z'rell. We made quick work of the Troll, Z'rell, and a few of the Absolutists. However, the Absolute Priest did a number on our forces, and even Jaheira was killed. After a few rounds, things were looking dicey. I had Don transform into Slayer form and continue to take out some of the weaker enemies. We were down to 4 Harpers when more Absolutist reinforcements came. The Warden was tough and took Lae'zel down. Thankfully, the remaining Harpers sacrificed themselves and took the hits so we could fight back. Eventually, Don was able to kill one of the others while Lae'zel was revived by Shadowheart. Things were still looking bad. The whole party was low on health and the Warden had just taken out Shadowheart, so Lae'zel had to revive her and take cover. Thankfully, the Warden wasn't giving up on killing Shadowheart and took damage from Don from an attack of opportunity just so she could kill Shadowheart again. Unfortunately, Astarion was killed, but this wasn't the time to save him. Don finished off the Warden and then made quick work of the last remaining Absolutist. The battle was finally over, and what a bloodbath. Everyone was dead. All we had left to do now was take on Ketheric. And I'll let you know now, I had no idea just how hard I made the coming battles for myself. We long rested and made the climb back up to the Moonrise Towers. While I was double checking I didn't miss any loot, I found that this guy missed the memo that the battle was taking place. I thought it would be best that he joined his friends and I tried to kill him. However, he seemed more content on sleeping than fighting or dying, and he just healed himself and went back to bed. So I left him to his nap. I then found out Palcansiv missed all the commotion as well. Suspecting the same thing was going to happen, I just left him alone. We went to the top of the tower and fought the last of the remaining Absolutists, before long resting one last time to fight Ketheric. We confronted Ketheric with Aelin by our sides, and we weren't going to mess around, so we kicked things off.
The gods fight at our side!
Straight away, Spider-Man came out of nowhere and one-shot Astarion at the start of the fight. I guess he's still jealous. Shadowheart used a potion of speed to revive Astarion, and then I had everyone turn invisible so we could get close to Ketheric. This, however, caused Aelin to be attacked by everyone on the map, doing significant damage to her. But this wasn't for nothing, as in the next turn, everyone converged on Ketheric and used sneak attack to bring him down enough to make him run away. However, he did take Aelin with him, leaving us to fight the remainder of Ketheric goons alone. I had Don transform into the Slayer while Shadowheart cast Wall of Fire on the skeletons on the side, which wiped them all out in one turn. However, this didn't stop the skeletons from taking Lae'zel down, and then the game crashed. After rebooting, I had a better start. Spider-Man didn't one-shot Astarion, which meant that I wasn't starting at such a disadvantage. This time I focused on all the other enemies before Ketheric, taking down the Absolutist that summons more enemies and having Shadowheart summon a Wall of Fire to kill the group of skeleton mages on the side first. By the end of the first turn, the Absolutist summoner was dead, leaving Ketheric, his dog, Venom, and a few skellies left. We also had Aelin with a lot higher health. I made much better use of stealth and visibility this time, and took Ketheric down without taking too much damage. After Ketheric fled, we were only left with Carnage, the dog, and a few more skeleton mages. I had Lae'zel Misty step away and get a good angle on the skeletons, and I somehow managed to teleport her onto an invisible edge, so that was interesting. While Lae'zel took out the skeletons, Don, Shadowheart, and Astarion focused on the Webslinger, doing some massive damage to him. Astarion's susser damage came in clutch here, preventing him from casting Sanctuary. While this was happening, Lae'zel fought the remaining skeletons. She had all their focus and this was super useful and pulled off some amazing dodges. Shadowheart landed the final blow on Spider-Man, leaving everyone else to finish the last 2 skeletons. The battle was done, but the real fight was to come. We looted all we could, long rested, and then proceeded down. After entering the Mind Hive, we killed Chop and the Intellect Devourer. We then continued to fight the Undead in the Necrotic Laboratory. This was a tough and long fight, but luckily Shadowheart had a Black Tendril spell scroll. Using this slowed the horde of undead enough so that we could pick them off at range, then use sneak attacks when they got close enough. The fight turned out really well and we somehow managed to beat them pretty easily. We then went to the barracks and found this group of Absolutists. We spoke to their leader who revealed that they found Don and kept him alive, while doing twisted experiments on him. Her and her men then attacked us. Thankfully, we could get the distance, use shadows to our advantage, and we slaughtered them. We then proceeded onwards and recovered at the recovery pod at the top of the elevator before proceeding down to face Ketheric one final time. Or so I thought. You see, this fight was hard. Initially, I started with the usual strategy of having everyone start on the side behind the skeletons, and I had Lae'zel turn invisible and rescue Aelin. However, this time Shadowheart was caught, so combat started before I could follow the plan. I managed to get everyone up, rescue Aelin on the first turn, but unfortunately Aelin was dominated by Mind Flayer. While this was happening, Don and Shadowheart wasted their turns killing skeleton mages. This turned out to be a mistake. Ketheric killed Lae'zel, then Astarion, while Aelin then finished them both off. Luckily though, Don killed the Mind Flayer, which freed Aelin and turned him invisible. Shadowheart revived Astarion, and while Don was invisible, he landed a massive crit on Ketheric, which caused him to come back as Myrkul's projection. At this point, we were all very weak and things weren't looking good.
Oh dear.
We were down one party member, Aelin was no help, plus there was still 4 intellect devourers and a couple of skeleton mages to fight. I tried to bring Lae'zel back, but Myrkul simply killed her. Plus he kept spawning more allies in, which made surviving even harder. Eventually he killed off my party. On my next attempt, I recognized the Mind Flayer was probably the biggest threat. So I had Astarion and Shadowheart Misty step behind it while Lae'zel turned invisible to save Aelin, and I had Don go to the skeleton mages, since he could pretty much kill them one hit and then turn invisible. When combat started, we did some great initial damage to the Mind Flayer and rescued Aelin. On the next round, the Mind Flayer was dead. Don had taken out 2 of the skeletons, while Lae'zel and Aelin killed the Devourers. Things were looking positive. All that was left was to kill Ketheric. And with our numbers advantage, we took him down to stage 2 of the fight. However, things were getting harder again. I tried to keep my party away and on the edges, however this only worked while Aelin was alive. Myrkul cast a spell which would suck everyone in, so I had no choice but to have Don transform and fight. After a few rounds, we managed to get him down to 250 health, but this is when he started calling the skeletons into healing. And the problem was, I hadn't been focused on them, so there were so many that came to heal him. This also gave him the ability to pretty much kill anyone with one hit. Eventually, he killed everyone ending the fight with pretty much max health. I attempted this another couple of times, both with a very similar outcome. I even tried to release the Spectator to see if it could help, and alas it was probably more of a hindrance. The problem was that my party didn't do considerable damage to him. Attacks were hard to land and most of the time would only do 10 to 15 damage. Not to mention I had no way of dealing with the sheer number of enemies that would spawn.
Much longer.
At this stage I was tired and frustrated and I felt like there was nothing I could do. So I thought I might have to take a break, and I also left to see what else I could bring to the fight for an advantage. I reloaded back to before I entered the Mind Flayer colony and took stock of what I had, and realized that there was literally no one I could buy potions or scrolls from. Everyone was dead. I had no haste potions, I had 1 large potion and 16 small potions. And getting another level wasn't going to be possible with the number of enemies I hadn't killed. Plus, doing these fights may take more of my potions to defeat them. So I made sure I had all that there was to take, and I tried again. I entered the Mind Flayer's colony, killed Chop, killed the Absolutists in the barracks, and then tried to fight the undead again, where I had a very hard time. It was very late in the night, and I mustn't have been concentrating. It took me a couple attempts and a really long-winded kiting fight, and I managed to kill them. After we finished them, I started the fight with Ketheric. Now, the fight with the skeletons gave me something crucial that I didn't have before. This skeleton archer. I'll get to him shortly. My first attempt I managed to defeat Ketheric pretty quickly, allowing for a decent start to the Myrkul battle. I quick saved so I could start the fight from here again. Now I know I don't usually condone save scumming, but at this point I was pretty much done. In my first attempt against Myrkul, I learnt that Shadowheart with Defensive Duelist along with Don was a good combo to fight Myrkul close range, and provided that at least one person was closer to him, he wouldn't suck everyone in. Unfortunately, I also learned that you shouldn't be on the edge near the water, otherwise Myrkul will just knock you in. But one really important thing that came from this attempt was I realized that this skeleton that Astarion had summoned during the fight against the undead wasn't in combat, and that it could attack the spawning enemies without entering combat, provided he didn't get too close. This, my friends, was the key. I had a couple of more attempts tweaking my strategy and learning Myrkul's patterns when I finally came up with a somewhat perfect strategy. As soon as the battle started, Aelin would get killed, so Don, being the closest to her, would have to revive her. While this was happening, Shadowheart and Astarion, who had just killed the Mind Flayer, would kill the skeletons that spawned on that side of the map, while Lae'zel would make a run for the other side so she could deal with the skeletons and spawning skeletons there. While it was Astarion's turn, I would switch to controlling the skeleton archer and have it destroy any skeletons spawns that were in range, usually 3 or 4. It was very important I did not forget this, or move the skeleton too close to any of my party, otherwise he would join the fight and I would lose this advantage. This did happen a couple times, so I was well practiced in preventing this. After Don was finished reviving Aelin, he would make his way to where Lae'zel was to assist her in killing the skeletons. It was very important that Aelin didn't glitch out. Normally she would respawn after she gets killed, and provided she stays close to Merkel, he would use his close range attack on her, and his long range attack on one of the 4 party members on the sides. When this happened, they would just use a potion to help mitigate that damage. And because his close range attack was being used, he didn't use his suck spell. And it was very important that Aelin revived herself every single turn so that she was always in range to draw out that close range attack. Once I was on top of the spawning enemies, I could have one of the pair on either side attack Merkel with a sneak attack, while the other killed an enemy that was spawning in. Shadowheart also spawned in some ice methods and additional skeleton archer, which also helped deal additional damage. This was a slow burn, and required me to never forget my skeleton archer and never miss a spawn. I used a variety of elemental arrows, explosives, and sneak attacks to slowly work Merkel down, but unfortunately we did very little damage. The sneak attack had a 50% chance of hitting, which often felt like it was 10%, and when attacks did land, they were lucky to do 15 damage. Merkel was finally down to 9 health, and a skeleton almost made his way through to him. Fortunately, after a very long and grueling battle, Shadowheart landed the final blow. Victory had never felt sweeter than it did that night at 1 AM in the morning when I had to get up for work in 5 hours. The suffering the next day was worth it. With Ketheric slain, we were victorious, and it was now time for us to take his netherstone and make our way to Baldur's Gate. We were jumped by Githyanki and killed. I came back after a good night's sleep, realized that I still had the morgue to take out, so I killed the zombies and then snuck up to the Githyanki and slit their throats. They were so confused by the slaughter, they were too stunned to move, and now it was finally time to travel to Baldur's Gate and hunt down Gortash and Orin. The party made their way to the edge of Baldur's Gate, ready to take on the new challenges to come. And that, my friends, is the end of Act 2, and by golly, what a roller coaster that was. If there's one thing I have learned, is that having no friends sucks. Not being able to buy any items, potions, or anything, is a bit of a bummer. The rogues are really fun to use, and provided I can get an advantage before the fight, the party can be absolutely devastating. I was even getting cocky with how effective their stealth had become, but a big glaring problem is their lack of AoE damage. They may be able to massacre one single target, but when it comes to multiple, they struggle. On top of this, without anyone to take the heat from them, they struggle to stay in a fight. And if it weren't for Aelin in the fight against Merkel, I doubt I would have been able to beat him the way I did. Thank God for Shadowheart's good conscience. Now the question here remains, are they the weakest class? Well, maybe. I'm still undecided. They have some very, very clear disadvantages in most fights. And it could be that I'm not using them properly. So could it be that they're one of the hardest classes? Though this might have been a lot easier had I not used up all my items or killed everyone leading up to the fight with Merkel. A lesson for Act 3 perhaps. Anyway, I hope you guys have enjoyed this video, and if you have, give it a thumbs up. If you're keen to see Act 3 and you want to see more of my content, subscribe to my channel. Until next time.
My prey awaits.